Hello YouTube. Today I'm going to be replacing the radio and putting in a double din. I've seen lots of people put in a double din. I've heard there's some different issues that we're going to have to tackle as we get into it, so we will tackle those as we find them. I'll also show you, if you don't have an aftermarket radio, how to remove the factory radio. It's real easy. You don't need any special tools or anything. Some of you are going to have the factory radio to start with, and removing it is easy. I know you can buy a tool, you do a lot of different things. 4 nails, just pop them in the holes. There's a little spring clip on the inside. If you've seen my Chevy install video, I snuck the back side of this radio in there just to show how it works. So once they release, just kind of put a little outward pressure on it, not a whole lot, and it'll just slide out. On the back you just have your wire harness and your antenna. This particular radio was great when I had it. You notice I mounted it level instead of flush to the face here. My thought was the screen would be a little more viewable that way, and so I did a little custom Kydex work around it to, you know, make it look right. But this screen here is going out now, so I'm going to reuse the adapter. This is a Ford Crown Victoria stereo adapter. That way you always have your factory wiring ready to go if you ever want to put the factory radio back in. So to do that, I'm just going to have to cut it off here, and that way this radio is still technically usable. And then I'll just solder all of these to the new radio and be good to go. Just to give you an idea of what you're up against. Keep in mind, this is a 2008 model. What I understand is maybe some of the older models, there may be more stuff in the way back here. It's about 5 3/4 inches from the edge of this ridge here to the very back when you hit on this piece back here. Give you an idea. So this radio is 7 inches across, which is plenty of room, even without grinding down the sided edges. So you got 4 inches. 4 inches would require removing this top piece and this little bottom ridge there. Okay, I ground off the top and the bottom lip, and the stereo fits in there now. So it's proof that you can run a double din with a little bit of work. Wiring these is super easy on the Crown Vic. I always recommend you get the little adapter plug so you can keep your factory wiring. If you really want to avoid that, obviously you can cut the factory wiring harness and go directly to the new radio harness, or tap in to the factory harness, but obviously that's going to be more work and messier than just buying the adapter. Probably the only issues we may run across now is securing this in here. I may have to get a little flexible there. Before you start installing your stereo, it's important to make sure you have all the stuff pre-wired that needs to be in there. For example, I have my backup camera wiring here. Since I already had a backup camera, I didn't have to wire this. So just for your purposes, know that this orange wire here on this one, it may be a different color on yours, hooks up to the hot reverse lights. So when you throw it into reverse, the backup lights that come on There's a hot wire that attaches on both ends of this cable, and then this goes to the camera, obviously. And so I've already pre-wired this one. Basically it's just a fishing expedition. Fish it down through there and whichever direction you need to go to the back. Then the GPS antenna, if you are feeling brave, you can mount this on the roof of the car. You're going to have a hole in your roof that's big enough for this to fish through, which is going to require you to have a hole in your roof and seal it from rainwater. And I'm really not a big fan of adding holes to these cars. You know, they already have holes, no reason to add more. An acceptable secondary position would be somewhere on your dash, and so that's what I'm going to opt for. I'm going to mount this on the dashboard as far forward as I can, solder up the wires on the wire harness of the stereo to the adapter harness that I've purchased, and then it's just a matter of clicking it onto there, attaching that, attaching these, plugging in the radio antenna, and then mounting it into here, however I'm going to do that. So there's the secret bypass, if you will. You pull this trim piece up here. If you remove this trim piece, then it's real easy to pop this up, otherwise you can figure a way to pry it up. But anyway, underneath there you'll see the defroster vent. Right behind the defroster vent is actually a pass-through, and the pass-through comes to here. I soldered all the wires, did it off camera. Obviously if you don't know how to solder, it's pretty easy. Put the wires together, put a little flux on them, heat it up with a soldering iron, touch the solder. When the wire gets hot enough, the solder will melt into the wire. And if you have the heat shrink on the wire before you solder, away from the heated spot, and then when it cools down, slide the heat shrink over it. You can put some dielectric tune-up grease on it if you want, or I just normally just shrink it down with I just use a lighter. So all the wires are connected, so we're going to do a test fit here. So it will fit approximately like that. Whoa, where'd he come from? So there's the final result. Everything works on it. I tested the GPS, so having the antenna there on the dash works fine. There's a trim piece that normally fits on here. It doesn't fit on the Crown Vic. To put the trim piece on, the stereo's got to stick out a great deal. So far, in fact, that you can see the metal on the side. So I opted to not put the trim piece on and just push it down in there. So I could probably cut a little piece of Kydex for each side and kind of fit it behind there, but honestly I don't think it looks bad the way it is. I'll tell you, if you're really wanting to bolt this thing in the way this model is intended, you're going to have to remove this, probably most of the dashboard, bolt it in, and then put the dashboard back on top of it. Honestly, for this car and a $120 stereo, I just didn't want to do that much work, so I kind of cheated. I just put a little RTV on the sides of the brackets, let it kind of develop a skin, let it dry for about 10 minutes or so, and then pushed it in there. And it's very secure. I've floored it to accelerate and make sure this isn't going to slide around. Did a little cornering, and I mean, it's in there very secure. So that's the cheat way to get this in here. But if you want to spend the time totally removing the dash, you could bolt in the brackets The downside of that is obviously if you have any problems with this stereo down the road, or you want to upgrade anything on the back as far as adding the different video inputs and outputs, or adding a iPod connector in the back or whatever, then you'd have to remove the dash to get to it, whereas I can basically pry it out if I need to.